What's up, guys? Welcome to the podcast. Today, I got a good buddy of mine, Seby. Before we get into the podcast, we're going to go and talk to our sponsors. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, I don't know if you knew this, but you can actually start solar with nothing up front, nothing down. My name's Johnny Garza. I'm with the McAllen Valley Roofing and Solar LLC. I'm the acting solar specialist here, and I'm here to make you aware of the incentives that we have. To give you an example, I had a customer come in and they wanted a roof. The roof was going to cost $12,000 to $14,000. And I offered them the choice of going solar. They said they were thinking about it, they just didn't know how to go about it. Said simply just give me your light bill and I'll go off of the usage that you've been using already in your home so I can make the system big enough to sustain your home. I also told them that I can include the roof. They wouldn't have to give me anything down. They can keep the money in the bank and I could finance it all together. Payment was literally the same or a little bit more than what they were paying for light. We have a 30-year warranty on the system and the marksmanship of the installation. So the sustainability of the system, if anything happens, for example, if we go on the roof and we damage a roof, our warranty covers that repair. So just call the number down below and Dana will answer and take care of you just like family.
All right, guys, what's going on? We're back with Seby. Seby, in case people don't know who you are, tell them a little bit about yourself and what you do, what your role is.
Of course. I'm a long-standing McAllen resident. My father is a physician here in the area, and I wasn't born here. I was born in Baltimore, but I was born in 1980, and my father moved here in 1982. So basically consider myself, a McAllen native. Went to school here, and then I went to an undergrad in St. Edwards, where I got my undergrad in computer information systems. And, upon moving back, my main industry has really been banking. I was in banking for 15 years. Recently left about 9-10 months ago. Now I'm in the software tech startup phase. Which
is interesting. We were talking about that. I'm going to pick your brain about that.
We'll get into that for a little bit. And kind of working amongst some of my good friends on our own little startup. And, I've always been a small business owner. I've had different businesses throughout the years that have come and gone. And just been a big part of McAllen. And many don't know also for the last 2 years, I've been elected as a city commissioner for District 5 for the City of McAllen.
So what exactly does a city commissioner do? What does that entail?
Yeah, of course. I mean, a city commissioner is basically your city council.
Okay.
McAllen's old charter labeled us commissioners. For most cities, people know them as council members. But we make all the decisions regarding the direction of the city's strategic planning.
Okay.
And not only that, we also make the final decisions on the city's budget. So there's a lot of power in the hands of the commission and the mayor in that they get to direct where funds will go, what projects will be started, and what type of planning you're going to look for in the future. On top of that, McAllen's got a single member district structure. And what that entails us to do is really become, I would say, personable liaisons to the members of our community.
Okay.
Because we serve as the conduit from the resident to City Hall, right? A lot of people, it's hard to call city management or hard to call certain departments, or people experience different types of frustrations. And at that point is when they'll reach out to their commissioner and let them know the problem that they might be having. It could be small things. They could literally from, my trash can lid is broken. I don't know what to do, to flooding on the street, towards issues with a neighbor. We get all types of calls, and we usually try to direct them or help kind of get them solved.
Yeah. What's interesting about you is what I like is that when somebody posts something on social media that isn't correct, you'll jump in and you'll correct them. That's what I love about it, because you know what's going on. It's like, all right, this stops here, man.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this. What do you feel about social media in a world where everybody has something to say and they can post it freely?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you can't deny that social media is empowering, right? It's empowering as an elected official because I get to reach more people at the same time with less effort. And just on the opposite end of that, you're going to have people who can also have the same reach with either nefarious means or misinformation. But at the end of the day, you've got to rely on everyone to use their best judgment, understand social media for what it is, take a lot of it with a grain of salt, but it's got a tremendous impact not only on business, on being able to reach the public and on good cause, right?
Yeah.
I always look towards social media. I know we've got usually we focus on the negatives about it, but you've got to focus on the positive aspects about it and contribute to those means, right? So I tell people, I say on social media, don't just follow, pages that don't provide any benefit to you, right? Follow things that lead you to your passion. Follow things that allow you to learn. Follow, other people that are moving in a direction that you want to move into. And then I always tell people follow pages of information, right? Yeah. So I'm always trying to get people to either follow the city's page or other city pages, right? Because you want to be constantly informed about either what's going on or events, social activities, or in general, just knowledge.
Sometimes I feel like those city pages are, man, it's like comedy hour in some of them. Man.
Oh, of course, and it's usually the same people coming back to it, right?
It's interesting. I that's what I love about this bigger city here is that everybody has an opinion about something.
Of course,
it's not necessarily always right, but it is entertaining.
And I'm sure it occurs in every community, right?
Absolutely.
We definitely like to think of ourselves as unique, and I think we have the attributes that make us unique. But when it comes to social media, I think every city or group has the same headaches and struggles as well as the same benefits.
Let me ask you this on a more serious note. When everybody's going through the pandemic, right, and we saw 100,000 businesses close throughout the United States, what specific insight did you see from being the city commissioner? What did you see that was very prevalent going on?
Yeah, I mean, it was very difficult. And I think the first thing people do is they seek either local government or local help. And at the same time, the city itself, with the unknowns, when the pandemic first hit, especially in the first 3 or 4 months, there's a tremendous amount of unknown. And the city had to quickly adjust to protect the services. One, we wanted to ensure that we continue to provide the same services to our residents, but we had to look at how it was going to affect our ability to cover and pay for those services. And so I think from the city standpoint, it forced us to look at strategic planning, how we do the budget, and how we look towards the future in a very different manner. But right after that, the first thing we started to really think about is how do we become more involved, and how much involvement should a local municipality and its government have in helping a small business, right? Or helping, a resident, or helping a homeowner or someone who rents. Because you've got a lot of segments of the population, right? You've got people who are renting, who are worried about paying rent. You have homeowners who are worried about property tax and paying their mortgage. Business owners, of course, small business is the backbone of McAllen. They provide the sales tax, which is a third, or if not a little bit more, of our total revenue source. But the amount of revenue generated from the small business owner, realistically, per capita on the population of McAllen, the small business owners are a very small percentage of people, right? And so, how much do you allocate to each subset and each group, and how do you establish programs that make sense to benefit the entire taxed population?
Yeah, it was a very interesting time, man. I know a lot of people that lost businesses, and man, it's so heartaching.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: whenever I hear where I talk to people out of McAllen, right, they're always like, "No, McAllen is pro big business. They're not pro small business." What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a struggle. McAllen is definitely pro business as a whole. When you compare, I think, the efforts of the economic development corporations of the different cities, McAllen's got a significantly larger budget, right? McAllen looks at really 3 factors when it comes to economic development. Is it unique and new to the region within a certain mile radius, right? Are you bringing in something that no one else hasn't been seen, or is going to be a destination, right? Because the goal is to get people to come to McAllen, spend their dollars in McAllen. And so you've got to be a destination. So if you're, I know a lot of people, I'm opening up a restaurant and I'm going to have my own menu, but there are restaurants all over. While you might be a destination, the draw might not be large enough to incentivize. And, I think, so that's one of the main factors. If you've got to be unique, and you've got to be a destination. The next thing they look at are job creation and how many jobs you'll create and what type of economic impact that'll have for the region. The third is sales tax, because realistically, the generation of sales tax is what's truly going to repay, let's say, an incentive or an agreement with that individual of whether we should do it or not.
I got you.
And I think McAllen, is conservative in the way they analyze, conservative in its budget, but we're also very smart, and we want to ensure that we're not risking the taxpayer dollars to a point where it's a loss, right? So you might see a business, there's been a lot of businesses in surrounding communities that have gotten incentives, and I think McAllen gets a little bit of flack for maybe not getting it, but realize that it's still available to McAllen residents, right? We're one region, and our competition realistically isn't far Edinburgh Mission, right? That's the friendly competition. Our real competition is San Antonio, Laredo, some of those communities. Okay. Those are the ones that we're focused on drawing manufacturing, bringing investment dollars into the community that aren't already here. And so we want to make sure that we're really competing against those communities. And some of the businesses have gone to local municipalities in the past through incentives. McAllen had a shot at almost every single one of those, but they're going to probably offer something, and as soon as it turns red for the city, they're going to let it go. Gotcha. We've got to make sure that the return is there for the taxpayer. We see some of those businesses for year after year after year, but they're coming at a loss to those communities. And so those taxpayers are really paying for that to the benefit of us who still get to utilize it. Right,
I get you. Okay. When you're sitting in these meetings with like these big companies, what does that conversation sound like? Like, what are they looking for specifically, and then how do you all interact together?
So surprisingly, the hardest thing is workforce. Workforce. That's what they need. That's why McAllen has a really strong relationship with South Texas College and its training development. And the majority of the incentives we give are based on the number of employees that get trained and pushed into the manufacturing facilities. Because usually labor workforce, the shortage and the availability of engineers, machinists, tech shops, high-level skill jobs are very difficult to come by. And if you don't try to foster that education and try to promote that, you can attract the biggest company, but if they can't get the labor, it's only going to, they're either going to turn around and go, or they're not going to invest in the area.
Interesting.
And you've got to look, these companies are making significant investments. So sometimes getting the conversation starts, and by the time they get here, it's 3, 4, 5 years later.
Wow.
Because they're investing on the low end $15 to $18 million typically in capital investment, and on the high end $50 to $80 million.
Wow.
And they don't make those decisions lightly, right? It's not just like, oh, that site looks great.
Right. Let's
build a facility, put a bunch of machines in there, and hope for the best. No, they do their due diligence, and they're very particular, and they do very, very detailed work.
Let me ask you,
when they're picking a site.
What does that detailed work look like? Like, is it like surveying? What does that entail?
I mean, beyond the real estate, they're looking at the proximity to airport and its capacity. They're looking at the proximity to rail, and the routes that they can go from there. They're looking at the highways and basically where they're able to go from there. We've got a lot of advantages here. Once we get companies to look down here, we show them that the cost, there's a lot of companies that are on the West Coast in California, because that's where the ships come in, and so they set up shop there. But the cost of being in California is significantly greater than the cost of being down here on the border, right? And we start showing them the routes where they can pull into ports throughout Mexico, and those ports are only 2-3 hours away from the Rio Grande Valley.
Versus, yeah.
And when we show them sort of the distance from what, even though South Texas, you've got to go all the way up north, right? The distance from South Texas to the West Coast and the distance from South Texas to the East Coast, it's surprisingly a lot more budget friendly than what they're usually doing, which is driving all the way from the West Coast to the East Coast. Because our population in our nation is not evenly distributed, right, throughout the United States.
Yeah.
The majority of the population, the majority of goods are surprisingly moving towards the east. So when you show them, look at the amount of money you guys are spending to go from the tip of the West Coast and moving 70% of your goods to the East Coast or, to the eastern part of the United States, and say, we'll cut that distance in half by putting you down here, even though you've got to drive through Texas, you take care of the Texas and Midwest market, and you're still able to move east and save a lot of money. So they're looking at really long-term trajectories of where supply chains are going. They've got to constantly analyze regulations, but not regulations only in the United States with things like USMCA and US laws. They've got to analyze what's happening in China, what's happening in Africa, what's happening in South America, because their supply chain is global.
Yeah.
It's no longer isolated to a single nation. So they're analyzing parameters that are just way beyond things that we sometimes don't have data on or need to look at. And you try to sell the area and the region on its benefits. And, if you look at our trade zone, the foreign trade zone, and what we've got down here, it's obviously been highly successful.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to continue to be. I think USMCA is going to help it dramatically. And I think we're going to start to see even more movement here as China starts to clamp down. Their labor force cost is rising. When you had a disruption in, with the tariffs and everything, and you have problems with ships and container ships that take forever, there's companies, the first thing they stressed, they never had that disruption before. So the first thing they stressed is we need to be able to have sort of a buffer of supply chain within North and South America to be able to move up and down when we've got that disruption across the oceans.
Yeah.
Right?
And what's interesting about that is that happened with the computer chips. Like
Exactly.
There's a huge shortage of them, and that literally disrupted everything, man.
It disrupts everything.
You'd be surprised that every single damn thing has computer chips in
Yeah,
it.
and it's happening with all types of raw goods, right? And that affects consumer goods, right? You have backups of months and months for furniture, right? People are like, furniture's backed up. Yes, furniture's backed up, right? We've got the J.C. Penney in McAllen that's going to be reopening, and they stressed how they were happy that they still had their stands from when they had closed due to the Hurricane Hannah, because they say all the new stores opening across the U.S. can't even find the racks to put clothes on, right? The things that we don't even think about.
Yeah.
And the manufacturing of just metal racks that hold hangers is backed up.
Interesting. Huh. That's crazy. Let me ask you this: California. I was there a few years ago, man, and it was a very iffy, sketchy place that I was at. But it's a beautiful place. A ton of homeless people. They're shipping them all to Austin now, and a bunch of people are moving to Austin. Have you been to Austin lately?
I haven't been in about a year.
Dude, I was there a few months ago, and I think the next day they were putting into effect what they were going to start kicking out the homeless people. Yeah. We went by tons of homeless people, man. They ravaged that whole area, man. What do you think about that? Like the homeless population in Austin. Do you think that could ever come here?
It could as our city grows. But those homeless populations are going to follow, realistically, I think, an environment where they have a little bit of sanctuary, which is what California, I think Austin provided for a period of time, and realized that it doesn't help solve the problem and it only grows it. And it becomes difficult, right? Because it's that dichotomy between humanitarian needs and, servicing the ones that are most in need compared to protecting the city and ensuring sort of the cleanliness and environment that the rest of the taxpayers truly pay for. But it's difficult. I don't think it could happen down here anytime soon. I think we'd have to be double or triple the size. They're also, I think homeless populations reside in much larger cities, populations 500,000 plus. And that's because, when it comes to trying to get resources, you have a population that allows them to target more people in a shorter span of time, and hopefully, whether it's panhandling or any other method, right, they're able to get it. But I was in Los Angeles just a month ago, and just driving through it, I hadn't seen anything like that in a long time. I'd seen pictures, but
when you're there in person, it's pretty crazy, man.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, if you create the environment where that can occur, it's going to occur.
Yeah.
So it's difficult. But I think also California weather, Austin weather are a lot better than the Rio Grande Valley's weather. So I don't see a lot of people making their way down here.
Another thing is those damn mosquitoes, dude.
Oh my!
They're like hovering outside. They're waiting for me to go outside.
The most calls I've gotten in the last about week and a half have been about mosquitoes. And for that many people to pick up the phone and call their commissioner on something that you would think is trivial.
Yeah.
I've never gotten a call on a mosquito before in the last 2 weeks. Shows what a crazy, just, I guess, attack we've had of mosquitoes. The city of McAllen sprayed 4 times, and we've got to be real careful with the chemicals that we're using, right? So I think they've got to take a little bit of a break before they go back out. Code enforcement has been out in force, just citing and knocking on doors on every weedy or high grass lot, trying to get those mitigated. Anything over 4 feet, we're typically able to cut right away and add a mowing lien. But even that got backed up. We've had to use a lot of subcontractors to get the amount of weedy lots taken care of. We had, at one point, we had a little bit of a backlog or a reported amount over 200.
Wow.
And we finally caught up. Now we're trying to ensure that people cut their grass, get rid of standing water. So as much as they demand from the city, we ask as much sort of help from the community, right?
Back, yeah.
Collectively, we're going to be able to get rid of it a lot faster than just relying on city workers.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I never experienced mosquitoes like that.
No,
and I was
no
telling
one
my
has.
wife, I was like, man, what is going on?
And, I think that some of the other cities have sprayed
Yeah.
occasionally, but not to the level McAllen has. We've got great resources, but, mosquitoes don't know borders. So
Yeah, they don't care.
Yeah. So they cross right over as soon as they see a clean environment.
All right, guys, with that being said, we'll be right back. We're going to take a quick little break.
Hey folks, there's a pandemic, an epidemic, and it's all across our country, and the RGV is a hot spot for it. I'm not talking about COVID, I am talking about bad credit. Don't let bad credit rob you of your dreams of a nice home, of a nice car. Don't let bad credit rob you of tens of thousands of dollars of high interest payments over your lifetime. Get it fixed. Give us a call. Beretta Credit Repair. We're right here in the RGV, 956-313-7957. Give us a call. You'll be glad you did.
All right, we are back. So, Seby, I appreciate your time, man, and I appreciate you all for listening. I want to dive into crypto, man, because it was something that I was fascinated with, and I bought a bunch of crypto, and then the next month it just tanked, and I was like, oh, man.
Who hasn't been there?
But you have a different journey with crypto. You've been doing this for a while, right?
A little bit. I mean, we got out of crypto because I think I was a victim to the first wave. And so that I think insulates you a little bit, and you see it coming. We saw the same sort of rush, sort of gold rush about it. You see the same sort of pickup on what I would call the more standard social media platforms, right? And so it was only a matter of time. And, I think a lot of people were able to benefit if they kind of got in and out.
Yeah.
But a little bit of greed gets you in a bad spot. It happened to me several years ago in the first wave. And so we had, at one point we had bought a few coins. It seemed like things were going good. And we built a mine. We built a fairly large mine and had been very successful. Unfortunately, we allowed it to continue to compound, thinking we were going to be retired in about 6 months. And as expected, it all kind of crashed. And crypto mining is a little, not as easy as some people might think. There's a cost to it. And, unfortunately, that cost at some point surpassed what was being brought in. And so we just kind of shut it down, let it sit, and then the overall crypto market just crashed for years, so we just never turned it back on. I think we eventually sold most of the cards on eBay. And as this new wave came around, I sort of decided to take a back seat and try to avoid a second punch in the gut. But no, it's definitely fascinating. I think it's here to stay. It's got to find a solidified purpose in the legitimate markets, and I think it'll do well.
Do you think that it could overtake the U.S. dollar anytime soon?
No, it it definitely won't take over any type of national currency. It would need to be adopted as some type of national currency, and it would have to be adopted by one of the top 5 nations, right, to have any real impact. Because what really keeps the dollar strong is our GDP. And, crypto, I don't think makes up 1,000th% of that, if anything, right? And so until you start infiltrating the GDP or becoming a part of that, it's going to be difficult for it to kind of be a standard that central banks use it. So I don't see that occurring, but it'll definitely be heavily utilized, and I think eventually it'll self-stabilize to where it'll be reliable.
It's interesting, man, because I've started following so many crypto gurus, like what's his name? I forget his name. I'll post it in there somewhere.
Yeah.
But I was following all these guys, and they're gung-ho about it, man. And I know it's going to happen eventually. Like, it's just going to bounce right back. But
for sure,
it's during that time where it's like, it's that low. It's like, damn it.
You can't do that daily check on the app.
Yeah,
man.
I don't even look at my damn phone anymore.
Yeah.
But talking about like Bitcoin and Ethereum with the blockchain, you have something very interesting going on in tech. Touch on that, because I think it's fascinating. The first time I heard about that was when I'm working with a drone company from Hartford, Connecticut.
Okay.
And this is the first time I was going through the training, and they were explaining all this stuff, that all the data that they're storing and it goes into the cloud, and they're using blockchain technology. When you were talking about what you're doing, it's super fascinating. So touch on that, man.
No, of course. I mean, when we first got into the crypto, phase, I guess several years ago, that really led into understanding blockchain. And really what we started to see is crypto as sort of the fad, unstable fad. And we started to realize that the platform, or really the technology that crypto is based on, only works because it's actually tremendously useful, right? Which is blockchain. Blockchain is really what allows crypto to work in its fashion, right? To basically be able to trust what you're buying and trust what you're selling, and what has increased the value. And so blockchain is, I think, going to be the eventual technology for any type of transaction or contract. I think at some point it's likely to really threaten the banking industry unless they adopt it as their sort of method for transferring funds, right? Right now, banks use the older ACH that we're all familiar with hearing, right? Check clearing and all of that. But eventually, with something like blockchain, and we've got big companies, Charles Schwab, JP Morgan, Capital One, they've all got blockchain departments now. And once one of them starts using that as sort of a method for transferring of payments, maybe it gets rid of wires, right? And the risk with wires, once it's sent, it's gone, right? Or maybe there's ways blockchain can help protect that and protect the fraud. But blockchain really will be, it's the platform for transactions because it's immutable, it's 100% trustworthy, and it's recorded on so many nodes that it's very difficult to hack.
Interesting. Yeah, I find it, so you're telling me that eventually banks will all adopt this?
I think a form of it. I think blockchain technology will either transform, or eventually blockchain will be the foundation of what banks use for transactions between banks and between individuals outside of respective banks, right? Because the benefit of blockchain, as you see with crypto, is the send and receive is instant.
Yeah.
Right now with ACH, it's typically overnight on the fastest method, or obviously wire, which you have to send in before a certain time, and it's there in the afternoon, verified by both banks with a lot of legwork on both sides, right? But blockchain is instantaneous. And I think the reason we saw the rise of all these small apps for, hey, I owe you $10 for a drink or whatever, Venmo, PayPal, Cash App.
Cash App, yeah.
What is the biggest benefit of that? Hey, I sent you $10, you have it.
It's peer-to-peer.
Peer-to-peer, and it's instant.
Oh.
But it works. But what most people don't see is that those companies are working on volume because the foundation of that is still the old ACH. So, I send you $10, you get it right away, but I see it clear from my bank tomorrow.
Gotcha.
So what the banks are doing is the banks are taking a risk that we don't see as a consumer. They're giving us the service and assuming the risk because they're doing it on a massive scale. And that is why you see limits, right? $2,500 per day or whatever the case may be. Because if there weren't limits and you had someone send $1 million and then they paid the other person, that person's cleared. They got their money and they promised that service. But if it didn't clear the next person's bank, Venmo or PayPal would be out that money. So you could imagine, because we don't see the risk they're taking, but there's an underlying risk because what they're doing is they're moving forward in the world of transactions, utilizing a more traditional method to get those done. And they're insulating us from seeing that.
Interesting.
But eventually something like blockchain could enable them to pull available funds instantly or verify that funds. And basically what they would be doing is protecting their risk, right? It wouldn't change for us. But now you'd get into large commercial transactions, large worldwide transactions, selling millions, if not billions of dollars instantaneously, right? To each other or company to company. Right now it's only done between trusted groups, right? Bank to bank, hedge fund to hedge fund, whatever the case may be, right? Established relationships. But eventually, blockchain could be the one that opens that up and mitigates the risk to everyone.
Huh. Wow, that's really good information. Let me ask you, so the blockchain that you're using with the tech company now, touch on that because you said from seed to table, it tracks.
So I'm a very small part of a company called Grain Chain. It's probably been in existence close to 5 years or so. It really was created and founded by 3 primary guys. The partners I look up to. Alex Macias is our CEO. He's been a longtime friend of mine. And then Jaime Lopez, an attorney, and Fernando Campos out of Miami, who's a longtime friend of Alex and also kind of a tech-savvy individual. And so initially, after getting into the crypto world, one of the partners already had a relationship with a silo operator locally. And he had built him a silo management system, which are very common out there, basically just managing the levels of grain that was in a silo, starting to measure for moisture, starting to provide digital reports, things that he could look up on his phone. And once we understood blockchain, those 3 guys really started to push the idea of creating a smart contract for suppliers and providers of commodities. Right now, primarily dry goods, sorghum, coffee, beans, grain, things of that nature. And so that's really the way it started years ago, is kind of building the smart contract system. It was kind of this theory that you could build on the blockchain a contract between a silo operator and a seller, and then obviously eventually to the buyer of the grain. So, the silo is kind of the midpoint. And that you could record the contract on the blockchain. All the parties would be on it digitally, and all the parameters that we were tracking with the silo management system could get recorded as part of the contract. Right now, everything is done separately, right? Contracts are, if even sent through email, some of these old farmers are still sending stuff through the mail, right?
Yeah.
And it's easy to fudge numbers or change things, or it gets lost. And I think we were trying to update it, but in a way that these farmers would trust. And that eventually just led to where we're at today. The company now has a suite of 5 products that basically follow the entire supply chain of a commodity, and basically from seed all the way to really delivery to its final reseller.
This is so advanced that it tracks the moisture in the area too, right?
Yeah. So the one of the products, Seed Audit, is pretty phenomenal, and it basically is the traceability of the food source, right? So the large food supply chain traceability is becoming a big thing now. We went through the GMO and organic phase, and we went through a lot of that kind of stuff, but it's moving into traceability. And this is really coming from demands of consumers, which leads to demands from the buyers. And people want to know where their food is coming from. Yeah. People want to have a connection to the earth, or they want to understand, the story of their food. And so we track all the way from the plot that the seed is planted in, and all the data that is gathered when that seed is planted, right? From weather conditions to soil condition. And we're able we even track what pesticides are used, what chemicals are used to grow it, because all that's inputted. Yeah. So whenever that seed moves on to the next phase, from harvest to, put on a truck, logistically, all that stays with it. So as soon as a contract is signed and we know that seed is part of that contract, that data goes and it gets attached to it seamlessly without anyone else having to do anything. And the data then follows it through the smart contract all the way to the final buyer.
That's awesome, man.
And it's really big in the coffee market. Quality of coffee is a big deal, right? Where they actually need to know the quality. So,
do you see this being adopted worldwide?
I think little by little on a smaller scale, because it's not 100% needed for the mass market, right? You've got a lot of products that, the general food supply market is probably, let's call it average or subpar, right? They just need to produce a certain good that can be sold at a cheap price or sold into certain markets that quality, or traceability isn't the most important. It's more sustenance. And so, but I think down the road, it's going to be more and more of a demand.
And eventually probably common practice.
It's just got to become easy enough and almost...
and affordable enough.
But easy enough for the farmers to do it, right? And so we're using a lot of IoT devices to do the work for them. Yeah. So the IoT devices are picking up all the data, and now you have a standardization of data. Previously, what you would have with...
Explain what IoT is, the Internet of Things, before people get lost.
Yeah. I mean, the Internet of Things is an Alexa or even an iPad in today's time, or any device that kind of connects to the Internet that provides functionality.
That can even be your dog's
collar.
Leash. Yeah, collar.
Yeah, I mean, basically everything today that connects to Wi-Fi or Bluetooth is going to be an IoT, Internet of Things, right? And it's going to provide expanded capability and of what it can do for you, or what it provides for you. And so a lot of IoT devices are now everything for, moisture readers, water readers, things of that nature that are being put into the fields or the silos. And so now that data just gets put in daily automatically, rather than having to be measured by someone who has to be on staff, who fills out those long list of tabled reports, right? It now gets logged automatically.
Yeah. Is that some of those things that are on top of the lights up there? The little look like little satellite dishes?
I mean, it could be, but I wouldn't think that anything locally already has IoT devices collecting
What's
data.
interesting is I joined the Helium network. I don't know if you're familiar with Helium.
I'm not.
So Helium is going to be, they use the Internet of Things too, which is, it mines helium coins, and in turn, it's becoming the people's network, which is going to eventually be like your cell phones and stuff like that. So you mine it, you put up an antenna, and then it mines it for you. Okay. And slowly you're building the people's network from like one location here, then you got another one like 2 miles away, and it just goes throughout the
basically thing. Creating nodes, which is what blockchain does.
Yeah. So that's already here. I think the first time I saw it, there was 24,000 nodes, and now there's like 95,000 in the United States. It's growing fast.
And I see that's where you see technology going to a decentralized point, right? Which is why blockchain is so popular, because you don't need this tremendous amount of resource in a single spot. It's decentralized, so you're really using the power of the people, right? And I think that's where a lot of technology is going to move towards.
What do you see going on in the next 5 to 10 to 20 years here in McAllen specifically?
Well, I think 5 years is a short period for the city, right? So we've got probably some of the most aggressive infrastructure work that's going to be done within the city of McAllen. We're doing a lot of projects with Precinct 2 and the county commissioners as well. So I think the city of McAllen and the region is going to see a tremendous amount of infrastructure and drainage work. I think those needs are going to be fulfilled in the next 5 years. I think we're going to see a significant amount of outside investment, in continued manufacturing and logistics, and hopefully a little bit of warehousing. We've gotten a large amount of inquiries, and it looks like that type of activity is picking up as people start to understand USMCA more, which was just signed last year, which was the redraft or the update to NAFTA.
Okay.
Right? But it's got a tremendous amount of benefit to the United States, because one of the things that the Trump administration did require in that is they increased the percentage of production that had to occur in the United States. Previously, I think it was like 35%. It's now up to like 65%.
Oh, wow, okay.
And it's not from scratch. It just means 65% of it has to be manufactured here. So what you see is foreign trade zones become very lucrative, because they provide sort of that shelter where you could have a plant on both sides, but you don't experience the tariff, or let's call it the penalty, right, from either country until it moves beyond that foreign trade zone. But you get the benefits of being in either U.S. or Mexico, right? And so that becomes one of the biggest hurdles for other nations, because as soon as they cross over a good, they're smacked with massive tariffs.
Yeah.
And so they've got to move it quick, right? It's got to turn. Compared to if they're able to invest in a foreign trade zone, they're able to move it over and without necessarily already having it sold or moving beyond the foreign trade zone.
What do you think about Elon Musk coming to Boca Chica?
Well, I personally see it as a positive, because I can't imagine what's already been invested down there. I would say, I don't know, 100 million minimum?
Yeah,
probably more.
Probably
right?
more.
You make that type of investment, you don't get up and leave. It's very difficult to just get up and leave. So when we talked earlier about the decision making involved in spending that type of capital, it doesn't come lightly. So Elon Musk is here to stay. SpaceX is here to stay, and it's only going to continue to grow. While we should, of course, be concerned with any kind of environmental impact or ensuring that the community is protected and not overrun, I think we've got to foster it and promote it and start looking towards other companies that benefit SpaceX, because even McAllen's gotten calls for supply chains related to SpaceX.
Wow, okay.
So SpaceX brings a lot of interest down here, right? You're going to see it's going to benefit everyone's housing market. It's going to benefit the sales tax market. I think South Padre Island, of all places, is going to benefit dramatically, because
Absolutely.
if you've got this influx of a new type of population that comes in with money, comes in from California and likes water, South Padre Island is going to greatly benefit from everything from home sales to probably new towers, to vacations. And I think the whole area is going to benefit. And a lot of people think it comes overnight, but it doesn't. But we're going to look 10 years from now, we're going to look back, and SpaceX is going to look so small compared to where I think it's going to be.
Well, Starbase is interesting, man, because eventually you'll be able to live out there and just see these rockets come out like right outside your house, man. It's awesome. It's a
crazy.
destination too, man. I think that's pretty cool. Before we finish off the podcast, I want to ask you another question. People that are coming into McAllen or new entrepreneurs, and I always talk about this because the entrepreneur hustle has really high highs and really low lows.
Oh, yes.
There's like nothing in between, man.
Yeah.
What advice would you give young entrepreneurs that are planning on coming into McAllen to start their business here or to start a life here, or people from outside, like from San Antonio or Houston? What would you give them advice about?
Well, first, that's on the Rio Grande Valley. McAllen itself provides tremendous opportunity, right? And I'm speaking more from the region. It really is unique in the sense of you've got a lot of people say the population of 140,000, but McAllen daily is kind of like the Manhattan. McAllen probably has a population of about 250,000 daily, right? And that's because most of the people that work in the surrounding cities work in McAllen. A lot of people travel through McAllen to get between the cities, so it provides a lot of exposure. And you've got a city that's got more restaurant permits per capita than Austin, Dallas, or Houston, right? And that's really because this is where the people of the Rio Grande Valley kind of come into. And so McAllen obviously benefits, we can see the benefits of that through city government and the overall revenues for the municipality. But, I tell people that the cost of living is still fairly low.
Relatively cheap.
The infrastructure is strong enough to create something that you want to do. But, while a lot of people say it's not Austin, San Antonio, or Houston, it's still hyper competitive. It all depends on the industry you want to go into, right? But it's definitely hyper competitive. And what I think McAllen, what we also want to focus on and continue to bring in industry is because we've got to bring in higher level paying jobs, right? If we don't have the job market down here, we're never going to get past sort of that really hard line of being able to have different amenities or higher level stores, because that average wage or that average sort of household income remains low. So we've got to improve our overall education within the city, and we've got to figure out ways to promote higher paying jobs. We've got to get people working here and making more, because as people make more, their lifestyle improves, they spend more, They want more social activities. They want more amenities provided to them, right? And so, I would invite anyone to come over here and put any ideas to work. I think the city has become more and more open to new concepts, and I'd like it to shift towards strong support for local business, right? Yeah. And you see that even in Austin, which has every chain possible, but the entire urban center is all local business, right? The chains are usually along the expressways.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
On the larger perimeters where they can plant themselves on pad sites in front of a Best Buy and stuff like that. But if you look at those large cities, there's a lot of support for local business. I mean, look at how much Tito's Vodka has blown up, yeah. Deep Eddy, Treaty Oak. You look at all these sort of local businesses. I only named alcohol companies, but there's a lot of others, right? But Austin has a very good ability to instantly give it a shot, right? Something new and local comes out, and people are like, let's try it, let's do it, let's support it. And some make it, some don't, but the ones that do make it experience tremendous success. And there's nothing better than local success stories. So, I would love for McAllen to have, more and more to be able to brag about as far as what was started here, and have the local support behind it, right?
Yeah. What do you think about the mentality that you have to leave the Rio Grande Valley to become successful or to make it?
I don't think that's necessarily the case. Now, it's true for certain industries, right? Sure, if you want to be a stockbroker, it's probably not the best market for you. You want to be an actor, probably not the best market for you. There's no doubt that McAllen can't provide everything for everyone, right? Like any other market can't. But what I would call it for small business or anyone that's looking to sort of do their own thing, I would think McAllen's as good of an environment as any. I've lived in Austin, I've lived in New York, and McAllen's where I came back and was most successful. So I think it all depends, on what you're able to do, how you're able to expand it. It becomes, a little bit, I think they're tricking themselves into thinking that by simply moving, the success will come.
Right.
The success isn't based on necessarily location, right? Minus outliers of industry, right? But talking just in general, I don't think McAllen's any worse off than living in Austin. And, it might be a little bit, sometimes the struggle can be frustrating. And so it could be a little bit of bitterness, right? To think like, well, if I have access to this, or I'm in a city like this, or they're more open, it might work better. Yeah. You never know. It could, but I think it's definitely possible in McAllen.
Awesome.
I'm very positive about McAllen and the Rio Grande Valley.
Absolutely, man. I think the Rio Grande Valley is one of the best places to live. And I think that anybody and everybody should travel to experience all that stuff and then bring it back down and then share it with everybody.
Yeah. I mean, we see how many people move away and come back, right? And they all bring something back with them. And usually some kind of creation comes out of that. And so that's always a positive thing.
Yeah. So appreciate your time, man. Thank you very much. Seby, guys, we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Got it.
Hey guys, I don't know if you knew this, but you can actually start solar with nothing up front, nothing down. My name's Johnny Garza. I'm with the McAllen Valley Roofing and Solar LLC. I'm the acting solar specialist here, and I'm here to make you aware of the incentives that we have. To give you an example, I had a customer come in and they wanted a roof. The roof was going to cost $12,000 to $14,000. And I offered them the choice of going solar. They said they were thinking about it, they just didn't know how to go about it. Said simply just give me your light bill and I'll go off of the usage that you've been using already in your home, so I can make the system big enough to sustain your home. I also told them that I can include the roof. They wouldn't have to give me anything down. They can keep the money in the bank and I could finance it all together. Payment was literally the same or a little bit more than what they were paying for light. We have a 30-year warranty on the system and the marksmanship of the installation. So the sustainability of the system, if anything happens, for example, if we go on the roof and we damage a roof, our warranty covers that repair. So just call the number down below and Dana will answer and take care of you just like family.
Hey folks, there's a pandemic, there's an epidemic, and it's sweeping across the country, and the RGV is a hotspot, and it's not COVID, it's bad credit. Bad credit can rob you of a lifetime of high interest payments, tens of thousands of dollars. It can rob you from getting that dream home or that beautiful car that you've always wanted. Don't let bad credit do that to you. Give us a call, Beretta Credit Repair. The number's on the screen. Give us a call. We're right here in the RGV. You'll be glad you did.